Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Sunderland. I am project manager from COTA, Central Ohio Transit Authority. And today I am here to talk about the Link Us initiative and specifically the West Broad Street and East Main Street bus rapid transit corridors. So first, I want to provide an update on, or really an overview on the Link Us initiative. Before I do so, I do want to mention if you speak Spanish or Somali, you can click on the link below this video to get access to slides in your language. So before I provide an update on the West Broad Street corridor and the East Main Street corridor, I want to talk about the Link Us initiative. And I want to talk about how previous work in the last decade or so led to the Link Us initiative, which is ultimately a partnership between the City of Columbus, COTA, MORPC, which is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, and Franklin County. Back in 2014, MORPC, the MPO, or the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, looked at our Central Ohio region, including the City of Columbus, and looked at the year 2050. It saw that 1 million more people were moving into our region, which was a growth at that time. We had 2 million people in the region, so really making it to 3 million total people in our region by the year 2050, which is only 3 decades away. In 2017, COTA wanted to look at what our network could look like, our fixed routes, to see where our current routes go, look at route extensions, improvements like increasing the amount of time a bus comes by, and also looked at new services such as on-demand services, technology, and most importantly to the Link Us initiative, it looked at several corridors in our region that were suitable for high capacity rapid transit. It looked at each of these corridors. We identified 27 originally, but narrowed it down to 13, and looked at what the mode that made the most sense for each of these corridors, including light rail transit, bus rapid transit, streetcar, and commuter rail. And then in 2019, MORPC took the information from the Insight 2050 plan with the amount of growth and looked at the Next Gen Vision plan that COTA underwent in 2017 to really look at how our region would grow. Instead of growing further and further out like we have in the last several decades, of really focusing that growth along key corridors, combining the transit with the development and growth in a way that really hasn't been completed in our region before. The Insight 2050 corridor concepts looked at modeled 5 different corridors for that focused growth. And 2 of those corridors that we're here to talk about today are West Broad Street and the East Main Street corridors. And then in 2020, again, the Link Us initiative formed, which is really a partnership between COTA, the City of Columbus, MORPC, and Franklin County. And it's really about moving these corridors into action and implementation, and seeing how all the other elements, including biking infrastructure, walking infrastructure, all link in together to these corridors. So again, we're talking about population growth. So back in 2014, we studied and saw that 1 million more people would be moving to this region by the year 2050, totaling in 3 million people. And I will say with the asterisk down there that these projections were made before recent announcements that Intel is moving into our region, and we'll have a pretty big bump in the growth and development in our region. And it's also really about capitalizing on opportunities with the federal funds available right now. In order to access these funds, we need to have local resources to put on the table to access those and provide investment within our region. Some of our peers like Austin, Texas, Indianapolis, Indiana, and others are already on the path to leverage these dollars And so the Link Us initiative is our opportunity for Central Ohio to really capitalize on this opportunity. And with this growth, we recognize that there are challenges that we have to address that we have currently, and that will have in the next several decades as well with that growth, including equity, innovation, economic development, workforce advancement, affordability, and sustainability, and really packaging all of these challenges into the Link Us initiative and making it key priorities to address with our infrastructure. I do want to mention all the other aligned efforts that are currently undergoing and have completed within the last decade or so, and really all synchronizing them to the Link Us initiative and ultimately leading our region for equitable growth. And again, the Link Us initiative is really about syncing up these mobility investments with the development in a way that our region hasn't really planned and grown previously, and ultimately creating increased opportunities for all, creating that choice to get around instead of having to own a car. You have choices to get to your job, to get to your healthcare, to get to the park, to get to restaurants, and ultimately to get back home. So right now there are 3 corridors currently underway. So we have the Northwest Corridor, which is a separate project, but also a part of the Link Us initiative. Generally, the alignment goes from downtown Columbus up Olentangy River Road to Bethel Road, and then ultimately connecting to the city of Dublin. Now, today we're here to talk about the West Broad Street Corridor and the East Main Street Corridor. And those are both in project development in the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grant Program. So those are well underway, and we are currently in design on those projects, which I will touch on in a couple more slides. And really, I want to emphasize that these investments are something that we don't have today in this region. It's really building upon our existing infrastructure in transit. Right now, we have our CMAX line along Cleveland Avenue. COTA runs that. But really, we're looking to build above and beyond. The elements seen in the CMAX and some of these visuals you can see on the screen, very similar to what you will see in other cities with bus rapid transit, but also light rail. And I'll touch on that in a couple more slides of some of the amenities that you would see in a bus rapid transit project. So that was the Link Us initiative. Now I want to pivot to talk specifically about the West Broad Street and East Main Street bus rapid transit corridors. So this is the East-West Corridors project, broken into 2 separate corridors, West Broad Street and East Main Street. Currently today, the West Broad Street Corridor, COTA operates our line 10 on there, and it's every 15 minutes. Generally stops are spaced, every other block or so. So there's a lot of stoppages, but generally it runs again every 15 minutes, 7 days a week. It is one of our higher ridership corridors in our system. In the first phase, we looked at this corridor. So we solidified a locally preferred alternative, which really we narrowed down on the alignment, the mode being bus rapid transit, and also the station locations and guideway alternatives. So in this West Broad Street corridor, we broke the corridor into 4 different segments based on the different makeup along that corridor. It's generally about an 8-mile stretch all the way from Prairie Township on the west side to downtown. And the corridor guideway is majority dedicated. So a lot of that space along West Broad Street will be dedicated for transit use, similar to what you would see in a rail line, as opposed to currently how we're operating most of our service where a transit vehicle would operate with all the other traffic. And then the East Main Street corridor, which is about a 13.5-mile stretch from downtown Columbus all the way out to the city of Reynoldsburg, near the county line of Licking County and Franklin County. Right now, today, the Line 2 operates along this stretch. In this stretch, we have different communities while the West Broad Street corridor is primarily in the city of Columbus, Franklin Township, and Prairie Township, the East Main Street corridor operates within the city of Columbus, Bexley, Whitehall, and Reynoldsburg. So there's a lot of coordination that has occurred throughout this process and will continue to be coordinated as this project moves on. Majority of the East Main Street corridor is also identified as having that dedicated right-of-way, which we know is a big component in making bus rapid transit that much more premier than what we currently have today. And then I also want to show that inset in the bottom right there indicates what the East Main Street corridor, how it would operate in the downtown Columbus area, utilizing Main Street and Rich Street as one-way pairs, and then operating along High Street to the Spring Street Terminal, which is a COTA-owned facility. So I touched on this a little bit. Really, again, we're talking about infrastructure and transit that we do not have today in Central Ohio. We really have like Cleveland Line, Bus Rapid Transit have our peer in Indianapolis, Indigo Red Line, that began service a couple of years ago. So one of the big elements is securing that dedicated right-of-way. In that top right image, you can see having that space dedicated to the transit vehicles so they do not get caught up in traffic, and the travel times can be quicker and much more reliable than they are today. Other elements that you would see on Bus Rapid Transit is enhanced stations. So in that bottom right image, having a safe waiting environment, almost a sense of place as opposed to what we have today, which is generally a bus stop pole or a small shelter if ridership is warranted. It's really creating that safe space. If it is dedicated and center median running, which much of these corridors are looking for, having that station located in the middle of the road as opposed to on the side and on the sidewalks. Some other elements, a level multi-door boarding. So instead of a transit vehicle today, if you ride the line 2 or 10, having that bus deploy a ramp when someone boards with a wheelchair, having the stations have their platforms higher and to meet with the doors, so wheelchairs can just roll right on, and there is no step involved in that boarding process. Also, other elements include off-board fare collection. So instead of having everybody board on the front door and pay for their fare that way, really looking at having that fare validation process occur in a much more quicker way, whether that's on the platforms themselves or at the doors, and creating multi access points instead of everybody getting in a single line and boarding on the front door. Some other elements include transit signal priority. So when a transit vehicle and bus rapid transit vehicle is approaching an intersection, the light can remain green or can remain green or push that transit vehicle through the intersection. As we know, transit vehicles often carry 40 up to 60 people in some cases, so pushing that capacity through the intersection with that increased capacity. Also, we look at modern vehicle designs, including looking at clean fuels like electric buses, and also looking at increasing the capacity so right now our current largest vehicle in COTA's fleet is 40 feet, looking at making these vehicles larger, up to 60 feet. They're called articulated buses with that bendy part in the middle that you've probably seen in other cities. Additionally, we mentioned this before, but really looking at creating transit supportive environments, syncing up the development patterns at those key nodes and station locations, and making those environments much more walkable than they are today. So this is a snapshot of what the West Broad Street corridor is. These are some station locations that we identified in the first phase of work. We really wanted to look at existing ridership and also land uses and development patterns. So generally, this is less stops than we have today, but the emphasis of this is really making that boarding time much more quicker, facilitating those boardings and lightings at key stops and station locations. For those of you that may ride the line 10 or even 2 today, sometimes those buses stop at every single stop, which reduces or increases that travel time and reduces the necessity to get to a location quick. Now on the east side, this is the East Main Street corridor stations we have identified. And again, this specific corridor goes in parts of Columbus, Bexley, Whitehall, and Reynoldsburg. And similarly to the West Broad Street corridor, we're looking at less stoppages and having those key station locations where boardings and lightings can occur and creating that transit supportive environment. So currently we are in the process. So we wrapped up our first phase last year. We're in the second phase, which is really looking at moving towards 30% design. So if you think of a design project, getting to 100% means we're all good to go and we're beginning construction. So right now in the month of April of 2022, we are in that trekking towards that 15% and 30% design. We hope to get to 30% design later this year. So some of these tasks on the screen here represent some of the key tasks in this 30% design, including stakeholder and public engagement. So right now we are in the midst of going out to various community groups, city councils, area commissions. We want to meet with you to get the word out about these projects and seek your input on various elements as we move through the design process. Through this 30% design, we also have to work closely with the Federal Transit Administration. Through that grant program that we can receive up to 50% funding is very key in the coordinating between COTA and the FTA. We're also looking at stationary design. So in the first phase, we really looked at these projects at a very high level. And now we're really looking into what these stations could look like and what this could look like within our streets and right of way. We also want to look at the connections made with these corridors. As we know, on the east and west side, we have a lot of crosstown connections. So right now on the west side, we have our line 12, we have a line 5, we have 9, 11, 21, all connect with that West Broad Street corridor. On the east side, we also have a lot of connections with line 22, line 23 along James and Stelzer Road, line 24 on Hamilton, and then line 25 on Bryce Road. So really looking at those connections, as we know, the line 2 and 10 have a lot of those transfer connections that are a necessity in our COTA network. Some other elements are looking at the traffic impacts with that dedicated right-of-way and some of the changes like transit signal priority that we're going to look into. And also syncing up existing plans within our partners at various cities and townships along the corridor to make sure that we're syncing up plans, existing plans and future plans with what we're trying to do with these bus rapid transit corridors. And then lastly, environmental clearance. So this is our NEPA work, which is a part of the FTA requirements within that grant program of going through that environmental process to make sure that these projects can continue to move forward and minimizing those impacts that they'll have. So where we are with the project, we've done a lot so far, as you can see from the last couple of slides, but we have a lot of milestones ahead of us. And so this map or this graphic on the screen represents that we're in that early 2022 stage. So East Main Street and West Broad Street corridors are in the same spot, trekking towards 30% design by the end of the year, hoping to wrap up the design by the end of 2023, and hopefully begin construction by 2024. And we could see service begin in 2027. So while there has been a lot of work completed so far, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we hope to engage you along the way. And lastly, I would like to put a plug about the Link Us initiative. There's a website with that link at the bottom there. That has a lot of information that if you want to get into details of more information I talked about today, I encourage you to visit that website. We're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, I do also want to mention there are several other YouTube videos on the Link Us YouTube page. So I would encourage you to check out those videos. We have videos from the first phase of work from public meetings from the East-West corridors, as well as other engagement opportunities that we've had with the Link Us initiative. And that concludes my presentation. Again, if you speak Spanish or Somali, you can click on the link below this video to get access to slides in your language. Thank you.